Chapter 3109. It's good for an old man to get some fresh air. His bones will rust if he stays at home all day, Chen Zhao said, chuckling. The old shaman snorted and tapped the ground with the bottom of his walking stick. At that moment, Chen Zhao felt the ground shake. It was as if his soul was about to be pulled out of his body. It was true. His soul was about to leave his body. Chen Zhao's eyes widened, and he forcefully retracted his soul. At the same time, Chen Zhao's small world pressed down on the old shaman. Slap! The old shaman's body turned into a pile of mud. Chen Zhao rubbed his forehead and looked at the old shaman's body in shock. No way. So weak. He hadn't even used his full strength. It was just a casual attack. This old man was simply too weak. But just then, the old shaman's body started reconstructing. Even his clothes returned to normal. Chen Zhao sucked in a cold breath. Is this guy also an immortal? He could still come back to life after being smashed into meat paste. Very soon, the old shaman was back to normal. Very powerful kid. The old shaman wasn't angry that Chen Zhao had killed him once. Chen Zhao didn't feel any hostility from him. It seemed like he was just testing him. But he'd lost a life just to test him. Did he really have to do this? While the old shaman approved of Chen Zhao also approved of the old shaman. Everything else aside, just that soul shock alone. If he was caught off guard, even he would fall for it. In fact, Chen Zhao had already been hit. There was also the resurrection from the dead. Chen Zhao didn't see anything wrong with it. Old senior, did you just come back to life? The old shaman chuckled. That's my secret. If people find out, I'll be in danger. Chen Zhao shrugged. Since the old shaman didn't want to talk about it, he wouldn't ask. Chen Zhao was curious. But it involved the old shaman's secret. There was no need to get to the bottom of it. Okay, everyone's here. I'll talk about the first round, Zhang Tianyi said. Zhang Tianyi said. Currently, there are a total of 3,300 contestants. Among them, about 300 are very outstanding and have qualified for the first match. The remaining 3,000 contestants need to participate in the first match. This year is a special year. Are we going to change the rules of the competition or the old rules? Mary, the 23rd generation blood, asked. New competition event. Zhang Tianyi said. The first round is a challenge. Now. Challenge what? We are the judges. Zhang Tianyi glanced at the crowd. Everyone was speechless. 23rd Gen rolled his eyes and said, Are you joking with us? I'm not joking. I'm serious. Then how do we fight? Are you sure which contestants can pass? There are two types of challenges. One is a one-on-one challenge, while the other is a group challenge. Before the competition begins, I will let them choose. Those who choose the one-on-one challenge will be my responsibility. As for the others, they will be divided into 7 groups. Each group will face a judge. In other words, you will have to face the siege of hundreds of peak-level cultivators. Facing hundreds of top-notch cultivators alone. Interesting. The old shaman let out a strange laugh. You can't kill people or use large-scale attacks. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. Especially you. Be careful. Also, don't go all out. Those little guys can't handle it. The old shaman looked at Zhang Tianyi with some surprise. He didn't remind the others, only Chen Zhao. Did he think that Chen Zhao was stronger than the others? The old shaman didn't know Chen Zhao. He had only heard about it from Zhang Tianyi. Before the competition this time, there would be a young, strong person who would be the judge of the previous world supernatural competition. The old shaman didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to test Chen Zhao at the beginning, to confirm and acknowledge Chen Zhao's strength. The old shaman looked at the others. He realized that the others didn't seem surprised at all. They all seemed to approve of it. Puffed. Youngsters nowadays are really amazing. Chen Zhao smiled at the old shaman. Chen Zhao, is it okay for you to split 800 contestants? Aren't we going to split it equally? They're all strong, but their actual combat ability can't be calculated that way. Maybe some of them are unbeatable against one person, but they can't even handle 100 people, Zhang Tianyi said. Fine. Chen Zhao wasn't modest. Remember, don't be too ruthless. Then you set a standard for me. Those who can take one move from you will pass. You can decide how much strength to use. Zhang Tianyi didn't know how much strength Chen Zhao needed to use. Okay, that's all for the first round. Let's go. Zhang Tianyi waved his hand. Chen Zhao, let's go together. Baifla and Chen Zhao left together. After leaving the rooftop, Baifla said, Chen Zhao, there are 6 people from the fire worship sect participating in the world supernatural competition this time. If you meet them, go easy on them. Oh, okay. If you meet my 2 people, go easy on them too. Chen Zhao and Baifla didn't have the awareness of a fair competition at all. Before the competition, they started exchanging benefits. There was no psychological burden at all. As soon as they left the building, the 23rd generation Blood Mary descended from the sky. Chen Zhao, Baifla, if you meet people from the Scarlet Church, remember to go easy on them. Chen Zhao and Baifla immediately promised that there wouldn't be any problems. The 3 exchanged benefits again. Then, Old Zhang came. Then perfected Qingping and perfected Wuxia came too. Then Old Shaman and Zhang Tianyi came too. Chen Zhao couldn't help but sigh. As expected, no one who could reach Shangqing was a good person. Being thick-skinned and shameless was a basic operation. They all accepted the exchange of benefits naturally. Oh, I don't know your people, Chen Zhao said. How can I go easy on them? People from the fire worship sect are easy to recognize, Baifla said. When they fight, they all use a type of fire spell. Their bodies will ignite with black flames. I'll have my people use the Shangqing record when the battle starts. Anyway, the Taoist priest you see with many golden talismans around him is a disciple of Dragon Tiger Mountain. Then I'll let my Mao Mountain disciples use the true art of Qingyuan mystic art. The true art of Qingyuan mystic art is a spell of the Taoist war god Erlang perfected lords. Its characteristic is that it opens a heavenly eye between the eyebrows. All of them described the characteristics of the spells their disciples used. Chen Zhao thought about it. An elite and helist characteristics, strengthening and speed spells? Death spells? These were their characteristics, but others could also use 2 types of spells. Speed and death magic, in the strengthening system, were not unheard of. This made things difficult for Chen Zhao. Chapter 3110. An elite and Hallis didn't have any common features. In the end, Chen Zhao could only make them wear something special on the day of the competition. Of course, if they were in Chen Zhao's group, then it wouldn't matter. Then it didn't matter. But the grouping was random. Fortunately, everyone worked together, so the first round was fine. But everyone was casual in the first round. As the number of participants decreased, they wouldn't control the competition like now. 3 days passed quickly. Chen Zhao was in charge of the first round. Island 98 was the largest. It was the largest island apart from the main island of the Biku Islands. The judges of the first round were all shady. But Zhang Tianyi still made a request to each judge. They could let each other's disciples win. But they couldn't purposely eliminate participants with potential. The reason was simple. Out of thousands of people, the number of disciples who could pass was too small. It wouldn't affect the overall situation. But if they purposely eliminated a participant with potential, the standard of the competition would be greatly reduced. Take the supernatural organization's competition, for example. This was because everyone's strength was generally low. Even Chen Zhao and the others weren't interested. Not to mention the others. Only the low-level contestants were unusually excited. But in the eyes of others, they were just chickens pecking at each other. The World Supernatural Competition was a symbol of the highest standards. So, without high-level participants, the competition would be useless. Of course, if there was a high-level participant who wanted to die and wanted to have a 1v1 duel with the referee, then the referee would be able to win. Then no one would let him do as he pleased. The Biku Islands was a special place, because it was in the area where the last spiritual tide had erupted. So the climate was affected too. Although the spiritual tide had receded, the climate hadn't recovered. Almost every island had a different climate and environment. Island 98, on the other hand, had 2 extreme climates. It was already June, but it was still winter on Island 98. It was covered in snow. In October, Island 98 would become scorching hot again. The temperature would be over 50 degrees Celsius. Island 98 was about 1,000 square kilometers. It was already very big among the islands. Before noon, All 800 participants landed on the island. Before the first round ended, it was noon the next day. Or if there were only 200 contestants left, the remaining contestants would directly advance to the next round, and the first round would end. Before that, if anyone left Island 98 without permission, they would be eliminated immediately. In a cave on Island 98, a few people were hiding there. The competition did not have many restrictions, and the competition was a free-for-all. Contestants were allowed to attack each other. Chapter 31:13. He kept smashing it for 2 minutes. The ice giant was huge, but its movements weren't slow at all. It could probably throw a dozen punches in a second. The surrounding ground had long been destroyed beyond recognition by it. To the others, Chen Zhao should have been smashed to death long ago. But even though Chen Zhao was sent flying everywhere, he was still perfectly fine. Suddenly the ice giant's fist paused. Chen Zhao stood up and stopped the ice giant's fist with one hand. You really disappoint me. You can't even break my defense in a minute. You really disappoint me. You haven't even broken my defense in a minute. And what kind of defense is he using? Chen Zhao hadn't died even after a minute. After smashing him for a minute, he still wasn't dead. No one had ever been able to break his frost realm. No one had ever been able to break his frost realm. How could he move? Give me. Before the masked man could finish. Suddenly, he saw Chen Zhao raise a hand toward the sky. The next moment, the sky suddenly turned deep red. Jasmine Dancer's pupils constricted. She stared at the sky in disbelief. The dark clouds and snow were torn apart by a huge palm. It was a huge flaming palm. It was so huge that it made people's scalps go numb. The entire sky was covered by the flaming palm. At the same time, all the contestants on Island 98 stared at the flaming palm dumbfounded. It was too big. It was really too big. The flaming palm seemed like it was going to engulf Island 98. The flaming palm only stretched out a finger. It pressed toward the ground. Nothing was left of the ice giant. A huge crater hundreds of meters in diameter was left in the ground. The masked man was also dumbfounded. He was completely dumbfounded. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing here? Do you still think I'm the losing judge? The masked man couldn't speak for a long time. He hesitated for a long time. Finally he forced out, I admit defeat. Okay. The masked man's head suddenly exploded. His body fell to the ground without a sound. All the contestants who had been controlled woke up from this truth. The masks on their faces also fell apart. Where is this? What happened to me? Why am I here? Where's the masked man? Everywhere was filled with deep thoughts and questions about life. Chen Zhao looked at the contestants. Suddenly, his gaze landed on Jasmine Dancer. You passed the first round. You and you. Chen Zhao picked 8 people in a row. Jasmine Dancer sucked in a breath of cold air. The other 7 who were named felt the same way. Does he know he's not being controlled? The 8 people who had been called looked at each other. They thought that they had disguised themselves well. Even the masked man did not notice their disguise. But Chen Zhao had discovered it. At this moment, they felt that the referee in front of them was terrifying. No wonder he could be the referee and not the masked man. Their complaints will get them nowhere. Bang, bang, bang. The dozen or so people who complained the loudest were instantly eliminated. Those who had already been taught a lesson wore an expression, as if they had already guessed this outcome. I repeat, please do not express any objections to me. I do not need any suggestions or opinions. My rules will not change because of you. Chen Zhao placed his finger on his forehead, and his perception magic spread out. In an instant, perception magic covered the entire island. Although this kind of perception was not as clear as the small world, its range was dozens of times larger than the small world. Currently, a total of 38 people have passed the first round of the competition. In other words, there are 162 places left. Chen Zhao looked at the crowd. You can attack me now. I will try to control my strength. Also, I will use clones. The battle will continue until there are 162 people. Also, if any of you can destroy my clones, you can also pass the first round. Let's begin. Many people couldn't help but attack Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao only maintained the lowest level of cultivation and attack power. half a step into the Shangqing state. This couldn't be helped, because many people had already reached the critical point. They were only one step away from the Shangqing state. However, it wasn't that easy to take the last step to another country. With so many people here, there might not be a true Shangqing state cultivator. But since they had reached this level, they had the right to advance. Chen Zhao didn't plan on making things difficult for them. These were participants half a step into the Shangqing state, or those who had reached the critical point. If there were no accidents, Chen Zhao would let them pass. There were also the disciples and grand disciples of the old monsters. They were also predetermined, but Chen Zhao had only found 2 so far. As for the others, there might be the disciples and grand disciples of the old monsters, who hadn't revealed their identities. But since they didn't reveal their identities, Chen Zhao couldn't be blamed if they were eliminated. Chen Zhao directly used his avatars. He could now use 108 avatars. Every one of them was half a step into the Shangqing state. Anyway, it was so that the participants couldn't stop. Until there were 162 people left, they would continue to fight. The battle was intense from the beginning, especially after Chen Zhao's 100 clones appeared. Many people impulsively wanted to kill one of Chen Zhao's clones. They felt that since Chen Zhao used cloning spells, the clones would definitely be weaker than the main body. Moreover, there were over 100 clones. One could imagine how weak they were. Of course, there were some cloning spells in the world that could be as strong as the main body. But these spells always had some flaws. For example, they consumed too much energy and had a time limit. They even consumed life force. Chapter 31:16. No one slept for the entire night. All of them wanted to fight with Chen Zhao. Simply put, they were asking for a beating. But they didn't dare to be as arrogant as the Japanese youth and say that they would only be satisfied if they beat him up with all their strength. These people who had just passed the first round were all arrogant and friendless. But after being beaten up by Chen Zhao, they more or less knew that they couldn't afford to offend Chen Zhao. He was completely different from the people who had gone against them in the past. The people in the past were all people they could beat and could afford to offend. But Chen Zhao was the kind of person who would let you die at the slightest disagreement. He definitely wouldn't waste time talking to you. In the early morning of the next day, a large ship picked up all 200 people and left. Chen Zhao was the fastest. Apart from the contestants that Zhang Tianyi was in charge of, the other judges also finished before noon. The contestants that the other judges were in charge of didn't finish until noon. As for the contestants who persevered, they naturally advanced to the next round. This couldn't be helped. After all, the judges were strong. But not everyone could fight hundreds of people like Chen Zhao. Furthermore, Zhang Tianyi wanted them to suppress their own strength. Even Baifla had a headache over this. It was easy for him to take away the contestants he was in charge of in one wave. But he couldn't possibly suppress his abilities. He couldn't use AoE attacks or large-scale lethal spells. Chen Zhao was the only one who didn't care about anything. He'd long thrown all the rules to the back of his mind. It was precisely because Chen Zhao was so unrestrained that he ended up with the best results. There were more or less a lot of other contestants left. The original number of contestants to pass the first round was 800, but now there were only 1,200 people left. Based on this number, they definitely couldn't go through the elimination rounds. If they went through the elimination rounds now, there would be more than 600 rounds. There were 8 judges, and each judge had to be in charge of more than 80 rounds. The judges would probably die before the contestants. The 8 judges gathered together again. Chen Zhao, if I knew this would happen, I would have done the same thing and used AoE attacks on the contestants. Baifla sighed. The first match was too strenuous. Not only was it strenuous, the result wasn't satisfactory. Zhang Tianyi glanced at Bifora. Chen Zhao has medical skills and precise control over his strength. His sensory range can cover the entire island. None of the hundreds of people were seriously injured. Can you do what he did? Baifla shook his head. There was nothing he could do about it. His perception could also extend to such a large range. Speaking of perception, Chen Zhao had learned it secretly from him. We don't even know if something will happen, so you don't have to worry too much, Chen Zhao said calmly. Also, even if something happens, all you have to do is run. Unless you encounter a god-level magical beast, it shouldn't be a problem for you to escape from the ether world. I'm just afraid of accidents. What accidents? That's just your guesses. Or do you have actual information? We don't have any information, but we can still use simple prophecy spells. Oh, prophecy spells? What did you predict? Chaos. No, not accidents. We didn't predict anything. Are you kidding me? You didn't predict anything, and you said that something will happen? Aren't you being too careless? Chapter 3120. President. Both of them were in awe of Chen Zhao. The more they knew, the more they feared Chen Zhao. He was a true godslayer. And not just one. Even the famous god of war, Ares, was working for Chen Zhao now. Chen Zhao wasn't famous, but this didn't stop them from being in awe of him. President, is there any news today? The rules for the second round haven't been announced yet, Chen Zhao said. Most of the contestants are preparing. Let's go eat something first. We'll talk while we eat. Chen Zhao found a nice restaurant, and the three of them sat down. Because they were facing Chen Zhao, Aluntarai and Manit were both a bit reserved. They didn't dare to eat freely in front of good food. Eat. No need to be so reserved. I don't eat people. Only then did the two relax a bit. But they kept looking at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao didn't start eating. Instead, he said, I met a few contestants in the first round. They helped me find some information. The owner of the 100 Vault Islands is the Egler family, Aluntarai said, putting down her knife and fork. The incident 12 years ago caused Island 67 and Space Nightfall to be sealed. The Egler family suffered heavy losses, but it's not to the point where they can't maintain it. After all, there are many islands with good resources and profits. It's more than enough to maintain the Egler family. That's why they're trying so hard to persuade the Six to restart Island 67 and Space Nightfall. That's why it's strange, Chen Zhao said. If we exclude the profit factor, there must be something in Space Nightfall that the Egler family can't get but can't give up. So, the Egler family is also a suspect in the incident 12 years ago. President, I made a hypothesis, Manit said. Oh, what hypothesis? Chen Zhao and Aluntarai both looked at Manit. Assuming that the mastermind behind that incident is the Egel family, everything seems to make sense. Chen Zhao was still a bit confused, but Aluntarai understood immediately. The Egel family is the master of this place. It's easier for them to carry out any plan than anyone else, and it's easier for them to cover it up. That's why it's understandable that they haven't found any clues in 12 years. Or rather, someone found something. But because the target is the Egel family, they covered it up. Aluntarai said. Also, Celestial Master Zhang's attitude is understandable. He wants the chairman to clean up the mess of the Egler family. Chen Zhao frowned. Old Zhang, that's too much. Guild leader, this is only my guess. There are still many doubts that I haven't solved, Shifeng said, shaking his head. Your speculation is very reasonable. I think it's the truth. Chen Zhao stood up. I'll go find that old bastard now. President, don't go yet. Aluntarai and Manit hurriedly pulled him back. Guild leader, these are only our guesses right now. It's not easy to come to a conclusion. Chen Zhao was curious about where the stars in the sky came from, and how they were formed. Unfortunately, he couldn't figure anything out in such a short amount of time. Chen Zhao shook his head. He could only give up. At this time, the contestants had entered one after another. There was more than one path leading to the Taishi world on Island 67, and they were very widely distributed. Some of the tunnels even went below the surface of the sea. He took out his phone and opened the GPS. It didn't take long for him to locate Monica. When Chen Zhao rushed to Monica's side, there was a magical beast lying beside her. Looks like I'm not late. Mr. Chen, Monica greeted politely. Chen Zhao glanced at the magical beast lying on the ground. With a curl of his finger, one of its teeth flew into his hand. Actually, the $200 million wasn't just for hiring Chen Zhao as Monica's temporary bodyguard. It was also for advancing. After all, if Monica stayed by Chen Zhao's side, then she wouldn't be able to do anything, let alone advance. Therefore, her advancement naturally fell on Chenjiao. Since your father hired me to protect you, you should know where the danger comes from, right? Chenjiao asked meaningfully. Monica shook her head. I only found out not long ago. I'm also confused. After all, I always set off alone during my graduation trip without anyone following me. But I didn't encounter any danger either. I don't understand why the competition this time needs to hire me. Hire you, Mr. Chun. Do you know about the accident that happened in the Taishi world 12 years ago? Monica glanced at Chenjiao. She could also feel his intentions. His intentions were too obvious. He wanted to get some information from Monica. However, Chenjiao's methods were a bit rough. He didn't hide anything. I know about the accident 12 years ago, but I don't know how it's directly related to you protecting me. I want to know too. Chenjiao chuckled. This road is really hard to walk on. Monica wasn't a girl from a rich family. However, even she was annoyed by the dense forest. It was too torturous. There wasn't even a single path. Almost all directions were blocked by dense vegetation. Just then, a figure flew over their heads. However, it wasn't a magical beast, but a contestant. The contestant didn't notice Chenjiao and Monica below. Looks like walking is really troublesome, Chenjiao sighed. Sorry, I'm Mr. Chen's burden now. Since Monica could participate in the competition, she definitely had the ability. However, she couldn't fly. This was also one of her disadvantages. Just then, Monica suddenly felt her body lighten. Her body seemed to be lifted up by an invisible hand. Monica was shocked. Of course, she knew that this was Chenjiao's power. However, wouldn't it be too exhausting? Mr. Chun, you don't have to be like this. I was just complaining. I didn't mean anything else. Chenjiao also flew up. It's indeed inconvenient to walk. Flying is more suitable. Plus, I don't have that much time to waste on the ground. Monica was lifted into the air by Chenjiao. Seeing how relaxed Chenjiao was, Monica also relaxed a little. However, the higher Chenjiao flew, the more terrified Monica became. Of course, Chenjiao didn't fly too high. After all, there were sulfur clouds thousands of meters in the air. To Monica, this was a forbidden area. Also, it was dangerous if she got too close to the galaxy. She would explode with a single touch. Who could take it? Just then, Monica looked into the distance. There were some magic waves there. It was very faint, but she could feel it from so far away. It meant that the battle was intense. There's a battle over there. Should we go take a look? In Monica's opinion, since she could see it, Chenjiao definitely could. Chenjiao looked in the direction Monica pointed and shook his head. No need. It's a battle between contestants and magical beasts. The contestants won't be in danger. Chapter 31:23. Just then Monica felt her body fall rapidly. Her falling speed was much faster than free fall. She was so scared that she danced in the air. Help! Help me! Monica frantically searched for Chenjiao. She thought that Chenjiao couldn't keep going, so she fell from the sky. But just as she was about to be smashed into meat paste, she suddenly stopped falling. She paused too, but she didn't feel any discomfort. Chenjiao had already landed on the ground. Mr. Chun just now. Chenjiao waved his hand and pointed forward. A black demonic beast was staring at them menacingly. Taiga beast. Monica's expression changed. She was about to explain how terrifying it was when she saw its neck and body twisted into a dough twist. Then the beast's eyeball fell into Chenjiao's hand. Monica's eyeball almost fell out. So simple? She knew that taiga beasts were disaster-level magical beasts. Furthermore, it was a calamity-level magical beast. They were almost god-level. Her family would organize expeditions to explore the taiga world every year. The biggest headache for the expeditions was encountering taiga beasts. Not only were taiga beasts powerful, but they were also very smart and sharp. They weren't powerful for attacking their prey head-on. Instead, they hid and waited for an opportunity to attack. More often than not, the moment they were discovered was the moment a person died. Rustle! Just then they heard footsteps behind them. The two contestants appeared behind Chenjiao and Monica. They saw the taiga beast's corpse before Chenjiao and Monica, and the beast's eyeball in Chenjiao's hand. Their eyes brightened. They clearly recognized the taiga beast. Every part of the taiga beast was a treasure. A complete corpse like this could be sold for a few million on the market. Of course, the most important thing was that the spoils could be used to exchange for points to advance. Leave the spoils. You two scram. Chen Zhao turned around and looked at the two. You want to rob me? The competition doesn't prohibit robbing. So don't talk about morals and laws with me. I'm not talking about morals and laws. I just want to confirm that you really want to rob me. Huh? Do you think we're joking? Both contestants laughed, not seeming to realize the seriousness of the situation. Not just you but her too. Monica looked at the two contestants with sympathy. It was good to have a bodyguard. Since that's the case, I'll rob you too. The two contestants narrowed their eyes at him. Looks like you're very confident in your abilities. But where's your companion? Are you sure she wants to die with you? It was very simple to sow discord. What if Chen Zhao and Monica were both contestants? If they are just partners, perhaps the other party would succeed in sowing discord. Monica smiled and said, his thoughts are my thoughts. His decision is my decision. Looks like you guys want to be directly eliminated. Don't worry, Chen Zhao said, smiling. You won't be eliminated. I just want your loot. Both contestants' faces darkened. One cast spells from afar, while the other charged at Chen Zhao. One of them was a long-range attacker, while the other was a melee attacker. Their teamwork was quite good. Chen Zhao lifted a foot, and the contestant who had charged at him was sent flying. His body pierced dozens of meters through the air, creating a ditch on the ground. The one at the back hadn't even finished preparing a spell. Chen Zhao walked toward the contestant step by step. The long-range attacker panicked even more. His spell, which was only halfway through its channeling, also collapsed in panic. The contestant hurriedly cast a shield on himself. But the next moment, Chen Zhao's palm tore through the shield and grabbed the contestant's neck. He had lost. He had lost completely. But what was more humiliating was that Chen Zhao was shaking the contestant's leg with one hand. Everything on the contestant was tossed out. Then Chen Zhao tossed the contestant aside. What could be more humiliating than this? In the end, he only had the teeth of two disaster-level magical beasts. Let's go. Monica stood in front of the contestant on the ground. Look, this is why he made the decision. Then Monica followed Chen Zhao. She also understood why Chen Zhao was the judge. At first, Monica thought that she was already very outstanding. She thought that she wasn't that far from the top. But after seeing Chen Zhao, she finally understood that it wasn't a gap anymore. It was a chasm. Monica didn't need to worry about advancing at all. Not long ago, a pitiful god-level magical beast ran into their field of vision. Then Chen Zhao broke its neck, just like the other magical beasts before it. It died on sight. There was no room for negotiation. In Monica's eyes, god-level magical beasts were almost undefeatable. But when a god-level magical beast faced Chen Zhao, their roles seemed to be reversed. Monica didn't know how many points the others had accumulated, but she felt that her points were enough to advance. Chen Zhao's efficiency in helping her accumulate points was too high. In this dangerous world, it was like Chen Zhao's back garden. It was like Chen Zhao's back garden. Mr. Chen, it should be enough, right? Monica watched as Chen Zhao broke another magical beast's neck. One disaster-level magical beast, 1 point. Killing a disaster-level magical beast was the same as killing a god-level magical beast. It was as if both were the same to Chen Zhao. Actually, with a god-level magical beast as his foundation, he basically had enough points to advance. There were 256 people who could advance this time. About 1/5? And a god-level magical beast was 99 points. Monica felt that it was enough to enter the top 10. Okay. Chen Zhao pulled out the magical beast's tooth and tossed it to Monica. This magical beast looks so ugly. It should be high level, right? Therefore, Chen Zhao didn't need to kill one more. Zhang Tianyi had told him to try his best not to kill the deity-level demonic beasts of the Tai Long world. After all, there weren't many deity-level magical beasts here. Killing one meant one less. Once, when Chen Zhao went underground, he encountered an earth demon dragon. Later on, he found records of the demonic dragon in an ancient book, so he had a deep impression of it. This thing was indeed very resistant to beatings. Moreover, the recipes were quite rich. When there was nothing to eat, Rocks could also fill one's stomach. He could even drink a few mouthfuls of lava. If there was prey, living creatures could also fill their stomachs. It wasn't difficult to kill the demonic earth dragon either. However, it was useless to just destroy their external bodies. The demonic earth dragon had a core. As long as the core wasn't destroyed, they could continuously absorb energy from the earth and lava to repair their bodies. Fighting the demonic earth dragon would definitely create a loud sound. At least, such punches wouldn't be silent. This also caused the demonic earth dragon's strength to keep increasing. Of course, there was a limit to this kind of strengthening. Nothing was truly invincible. Even Chen Zhao didn't dare to say that he was invincible, let alone the demonic earth dragon. However, if he didn't kill it, it wouldn't stop bothering him. Chen Zhao decided to give it a vicious one. Chen Zhao suddenly punched and pierced through the demonic earth dragon's chest. It left a 2-meter wide hole in its chest. The remaining power even shook the demonic earth dragon's core. As expected, the demonic earth dragon was scared. It flipped over and fled without even repairing the hole in its chest. Chen Zhao exhaled. It finally ran away. If it continued to be stubborn, Chen Zhao would probably kill it. Why didn't you kill it? It's a god-level magical beast. You clearly have the power. Hurry up and chase after it and kill it. How can you let it go? Chen Zhao hated people who didn't know their place and didn't know when to stop. The two contestants immediately felt their bodies being restrained. Chen Zhao picked up his phone. Coordinates 544,144-1. 2 contestants eliminated. Chen Zhao sent the coordinates to the person in charge of elimination. The person in charge of eliminating contestants was also the judge. The main person in charge was the 23rd generation Blood Mary. She was in charge of the backline. Under normal circumstances, she wouldn't appear. Specialized departments would take over. When the 2 contestants saw Chen Zhao contact the eliminated team members, they realized that Chen Zhao wasn't a contestant but a judge. Both of their faces immediately turned red. Thinking back to their previous actions, they wanted to crawl into a hole. It was so embarrassing. They actually dared to steal the prize from the judge. Then they even wanted to split the prize with Chen Zhao. The first time was fine, but the second time was when their lives were in danger. Chen Zhao's action meant that they were eliminated. The judges would only act when the contestants were in danger. They would choose whether or not to act based on their own judgment. When the judges felt that they had to act, it meant that the contestants' lives were in danger. This also meant that they couldn't continue the competition. Unfair. It's unfair. She's a contestant too. Why can she get your protection? Why are we eliminated? This world is unfair, Chen Zhao said indifferently. Plus, do you have the right to talk about fairness with me? Their faces turned red. Even though they were angry that Chen Zhao had embarrassed them. They were angry that Chen Zhao had embarrassed them. But it was hard for them to retort. Not long after, the members of the elimination department arrived. They both wore masks. After confirming Chen Zhao's identity, they took the 2 contestants away. Technically, I'm also cheating, right? Monica said emotionally. After all, the 2 contestants had been eliminated right in front of her. No, you're not eliminated because you paid $200 million. If everyone can get a promotion spot after paying $200 million, I think the organizers would be willing to sell it publicly. It's just a competition. The promotion spot is really expensive. But I'm curious. Since the Egler family is so rich, logically speaking, you should be able to get a top contestant, right? But not only did you not, you're also so weak. Only a few of you have awakened. I really don't understand. Chapter 31-25. When Chen Zhao first heard about the Egler family, he didn't think much of it. But then he realized that something wasn't right. The Egler family wasn't a millennium-old family, but it had a few hundred years of history. At its peak, the family's influence and power weren't inferior to Chen Zhao's former enemy, the millennium-old Filer family. The Filer family had been isolated from the world for hundreds of years. They had almost no contact with the spiritual world. They only had commercial activities. But even so, the Filer family could still maintain a strong fighting force. They could scoop up a few top fighters. Those few top fighters weren't enough to face a real top fighter. They were at most second-rate. But it wasn't hard to see the power and foundation of a millennium-old family. The Egler family wasn't any weaker than the Filer family. Plus, the Egler family didn't have any great enemies, nor did they ruin the family's reputation. So the Egler family had been in contact with the spiritual world for hundreds of years. For example, the World Supernatural Competition. The Egler family even used the 100 Ku Islands as the competition venue. It was clear that the Egler family was quite influential. But it was such an influential family. Not to mention a peerless combat power. Even the family only had 5 awakened. 2 of them were children. What was this? Was this the foundation a top family should have? Unless all the members of the Egler family were infertile. Otherwise, it was hard to imagine how such a big family could be so weak. The Egler family wasn't a small family. They didn't have money or resources. The Egler family was very rich, and had the 100 Ku Islands. They didn't lack resources. They could easily take out $200 million and throw it at Chen Zhao's face. It had nothing to do with being poor. As long as they had money and resources, even a pig could become a top fighter. So Chen Zhao didn't believe that the Egler family only had 5 awakened like the rumors said. Plus, the father and daughter Monica and Maurice that Chen Zhao had interacted with so far weren't rich kids. As the patriarch, Merit Agel was obviously well-educated and cultured. Although they did not interact much with Chen Zhao, few people would feel enmity towards someone like Meriwether Agler. He always knew how to maintain friendships. Although Monica didn't seem to have her father's aristocratic upbringing. However, she was also a humble and smart girl. Her appearance was not outstanding, so people might think that she was a brainless fat woman. But in reality, being fat was just her disguise. Chen Zhao could feel that Monica was a rather meticulous and smart girl. Both father and daughter had powerful genes, and they were able to unleash their full potential. With such powerful genes and a good family upbringing, it was impossible for him to survive. Chen Zhao didn't believe that the powerful Agel family would weaken for no reason. Of course, in principle, this was their family's own private secret. Chen Zhao didn't really want to ask. However, Chen Zhao was worried that the secret would affect the safety of the match. In terms of his duty, he really didn't want to meddle in other people's business. But if something really happened, it was impossible for Chen Zhao to stay out of it. As for whether Monica knew what was going on, Chen Zhao couldn't tell either. After all, Chen Zhao wasn't an intellectual type. Besides, Monica wasn't the enemy. Therefore, Chen Zhao couldn't be suspicious just because of a little. He would pull out Monica's tendons and skin her, so that she would tell the truth. However, Chen Zhao believed that if something really happened, Monica would be the most important person. Monica followed Chen Zhao from time to time. Ever since the 2 contestants were eliminated, Monica had stopped walking. Ever since the 2 contestants were eliminated, Chen Zhao hadn't killed another magical beast. More accurately, he hadn't encountered one on his own. Every time he encountered one, it meant that there were contestants present. It also meant that some contestants would be eliminated. Clearly, Chen Zhao was avoiding the magical beasts on purpose. Mr. Chen, your perception range is really large. Yes. From what I know, there shouldn't be more than 3 people in the world with a greater perception range than mine. Is there anyone else with greater perception than Mr. Chen? One of them is the person who taught me this technique. He's also one of the judges this year, the leader of the fire worship sect, Mr. Bifla. For people like Chen Zhao, magic and whatnot were secondary. At most, he would teach them techniques. What about the other 2? The other one is the main judge, Zhang Tianyi, Chen Zhao said with a shrug. Monica agreed with this. One had taught Chen Zhao, so his perception definitely wouldn't be lower than Chen Zhao's. The other was Zhang Tianyi. As the top person in the spiritual world, this name wasn't out of Monica's expectations. What about the 3rd person? I don't know. I'll leave one empty. I think there'll be 1 or 2 people, Chen Zhao said casually. Suddenly his expression changed. Someone's in trouble again. Looks like the elimination rate here is really high. That's right, Chen Zhao said casually. Monica immediately prepared herself. She rose into the air and fell. Although she was mentally prepared, she still felt extremely uncomfortable at such a high speed. Help! Help! Seeing Chen Zhao and Monica land, The contestant ran toward Chen Zhao, covered in wounds. Chen Zhao frowned at the magical beast that was chasing him. This magical beast seemed different. The magical beast panted heavily. Saliva dripped from its slightly cracked mouth. It had no pupils. Its eyes were completely black. Chen Zhao could clearly feel that it was of the fire and wind element, but black lightning flowed on its body. It wasn't a god-tier magical beast, but it vaguely exuded the might of a god-tier magical beast. Chen Zhao raised his hand and grabbed at the magical beast. Huh! Chen Zhao was stunned. No reaction. Chen Zhao realized that he'd lost control of his efficiency. More accurately, he'd lost control of the small world around the magical beast. The next moment, a black lightning bolt suddenly shot out of the magical beast and struck Chen Zhao. Boom! With a huge explosion, Chen Zhao was sent flying. Monica was shocked. What happened? The magical beast actually hurt Chen Zhao? The begging contestant was filled with despair. He'd thought that his savior had come. He didn't expect Chen Zhao to be so useless. Chen Zhao stood up in a sorry state. He felt his small world. It was operating normally, but there was an empty area. It was where the magical beast was. His small world had been neutralized by the magical beast's power? Chen Zhao was even more shocked. How did it happen? Just then, a person walked out from behind the magical beast. The person stood beside the magical beast, and it didn't attack him. I heard that there's a new judge this year. Is that you? Chapter 31:26. Judge? You're the judge? The contestant who'd asked for help earlier was shocked. The next moment, disappointment appeared on his face. Why are you so weak? Chen Zhao and Monica ignored the contestant. The uninvited guest also ignored him. He was an insignificant, transparent person. The uninvited guest looked at Monica. Monica, you don't seem to recognize me. Chen Zhao looked at Monica. You recognize him? Monica frowned and thought for a while. Then she shook her head. I don't have any impression of him. Chen Zhao looked at the uninvited guest. Sir, it seems like you got the wrong person. Ha! You don't seem to be worth $200 million at all. Chen Zhao shrugged. If you judge based on that, you'll probably die a horrible death. What if it's them? The uninvited guest raised his hand and waved. Magical beasts walked out of the forest one after another. Chen Zhao was dazed. These magical beasts were the same as the previous one. They could both neutralize Chen Zhao's pocket world. Chen Zhao's senses were also in a hurry to enter the pocket world. So they were transparent. If Chen Zhao didn't sense them specifically, he wouldn't be able to discover them. After all, he could sense hundreds of square kilometers. Without a square kilometer, even Chen Zhao would find it hard to discover them. These magical beasts weren't actually very strong. They were at the peak of the calamity level, close to God level. The person seemed to be confident in this battle. Monica, I suggest you come with me. He can't protect you. What if I refuse? Monica looked at the stranger. It doesn't matter to me. Whether you obey or resist, it won't change anything, the person said. Then he looked at Chen Zhao. Am I right? Chen Zhao chuckled. You're the first person who dares to ask me this. Fine. Looks like I need to kill a judge to prove my ability. The person waved his hand. A few magical beasts beside him suddenly pounced at Chen Zhao. Monica's face showed some concern. The contestant's face was filled with despair. In the blink of an eye, a magical beast's bloody mouth covered Chen Zhao. It swallowed Chen Zhao alive. That person revealed a hint of a smile. How weak. But the next moment, the magical beast that had swallowed Chen Zhao exploded. Chen Zhao stood there calmly, as if nothing had happened. So weak. Chen Zhao said the same thing. The corner of that person's eye twitched slightly. However, the dozens of demonic beasts around him were innately the bane of the small world. He was still confident in his victory, so he still had a victorious smile on his face. Now, let me demonstrate why I am the referee. Chen Zhao stretched his limbs. Primordial regression technique, level 1. Chen Zhao's aura changed. That person's eyelids twitched, clearly having a premonition that something bad was about to happen. Suddenly, Chen Zhao disappeared. An ear-piercing sound pierced through the air. The man's ears couldn't take it anymore. He covered his ears, but couldn't stop the piercing pain. Then he saw the scene of the magical beasts beside him exploding. However, the scene was like a slow-motion scene in a movie. Blood splattered everywhere as magical beasts exploded one by one. It was a chaotic mix of fast and slow. Dozens of terrifying demonic beasts actually exploded in an instant. When the piercing sound stopped, Chen Zhao returned to his original spot. From start to finish, only a second had passed. Perhaps not even a second. All the magical beasts had turned into fireworks of blood and flesh. Monica and that person were both dumbfounded. Was there only a beginning in their minds? But in reality, it was already over. Chen Zhao looked at that person. Next you will die. Wait. You misunderstood. I'm not an enemy. The person hurriedly called out. My enemies often answer me like this when they beg for mercy. But guess if I believe them or not. I'm serious, the person said. I'm not an enemy. I'm Monica's brother. Chen Zhao turned his head to Monica. He said he's your brother? Monica shook her head and said in a very certain tone. I don't know him. And I've never heard that I have a brother, not even dead ones. Looks like you're not. Chen Zhao looked at that person again. I'm real, the person said hurriedly. I'm Ramat Agel. I'm her older brother. She has a second brother who's here too. You say you're Monica's brother. Do you have any proof? Ramat Agel hurriedly took out a gold pendant and tossed it to Monica. Monica caught the pendant with hesitation in her eyes. You should know this pendant, right? Ramat Agel asked. Monica seemed to recognize this pendant. The pendant could be opened, and there was a small, exquisite, but incomplete gemstone hidden inside. Monica frowned, and also took out a ring from her bosom. The ring was inlaid with a gem, and it just so happened to match the gap in the gem. However, the two were still incomplete when put together. There seemed to be a part missing. Monica nodded at Chen Zhao. Even if you prove that you're Monica's brother that she's never met, it doesn't mean you're safe. You want to kill your sister, so you still have to die. No, I'm not going to kill Monica. I just want to take her away. Her second brother Tace, and I came here to save Monica, Ramush Agel said. So you know that someone wants to kill Monica. And it's not you and Monica's second brother? Of course we're not going to kill Monica. So you know who wants to kill Monica? It's our father, Ramat Agel said. Stop joking. This doesn't make sense. Chen Zhao shook his head. First, he would spend $200 million to protect Monica, then kill her, increasing the difficulty for him? I know this doesn't make sense, but it's the truth. Our father has been planning something since 30 years ago. Tace and I have been hunted down by our father. Oh right, Monica had a third brother, but he's already dead. It was our father who killed him. That's right. Monica had a third brother, but he's already dead. Compared to you, I'm more willing to believe Mr. Morizer, who spent $200 million to hire me. Chen Zhao was a bit confused. He could vaguely feel Ramat Agel's anxiety and urgency. He seemed to be anxious because he couldn't convince Chen Zhao and Monica. He was also worried about something. But just as Chen Zhao had said, he couldn't go against common sense and believe Ramat Agel's words. Plus, Chen Zhao didn't think that Morizer would be stupid enough to increase the difficulty for him. And it seemed to be very easy for Morizer Agler to kill his daughter. Monica would almost never be on guard against her father. Plus, could a pendant really prove their relationship? Chapter 3127. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't know if Monica could confirm their relationship through a pendant. Judging from Monica's expression, she probably could. However, even though Monica confirmed that Ramush Agler was her brother, she didn't trust him, because she didn't know if Ramush Agler was telling the truth. She was naturally wary of this brother, who she'd never met, and had come out of nowhere. Ramund had said that her father wanted to kill her, but Monica was still more willing to trust her father. Not this brother who'd suddenly visited and attacked them first. The contestant didn't know if he should stay or leave. The contestants didn't know whether they should stay or leave. After all, according to the rules, Chen Zhao's attack meant that he was eliminated. After all, according to the rules, if Chen Zhao attacked, it meant that he was eliminated. Chen Zhao glanced at the contestant, and then notified the eliminated team members. He didn't waste any time. The contestant knew that it was too late. Chen Zhao glanced at the contestant, and then notified the eliminated team members. The current situation was somewhat complicated. Monica and Chen Zhao didn't trust Ramund Egler. And if they were real siblings, Monica would definitely not be able to lay her hands on Ramusha Goli. Just then, a flying magical beast descended from the sky. On top of the flying magical beast stood a man. The flying magical beast looked like a huge bird, but it had small claws on its wings. It lay on the ground. Its mouth was like a bird's beak, but there were rows of sharp teeth on its upper and lower jaws. It looked like a winged dragon. It was huge, at least 30 to 40 tons. It was like a small mountain on the ground. It emitted a powerful and terrifying aura. It was a god-level magical beast. After the man dismounted from the flying magic beast, the flying magic beast obediently lay down beside the man. Ramund, you still haven't taken Monica away? Taser. Ramund was a bit awkward. They were brothers, but his younger brother, Taser, seemed to be the leader. Seeing the corpses of the magical beasts, Taser frowned. Ramush, you lost? Taser, he's very powerful, Ramush Agel reminded. Don't find excuses for your incompetence, Taser said. Monica, come here. Tate Agler looked at Monica and said in a commanding tone. Monica was unmoved. Clearly, she had no feelings for either Lamont or Taser. Ramund Egler was still all right. At least his attitude was not that unacceptable. But this second brother's attitude was quite uncomfortable. Come here, Tace Agler emphasized. Chen Zhao snorted. The magical beast next to Tess suddenly spread its wings and blocked Tess Agler. The wings of the magical beast emitted a heavy explosive sound, as if something heavy had smashed into them. Tess Agle's expression darkened. The demonic beast beside him spread its wings to the fullest like a fighting rooster. The demonic beast let out a high-pitched cry, its voice as loud as a bell. In an instant, hundreds of flying magical beasts were summoned. The scene that blotted out the sky caused Monica's expression to change. She couldn't help but look back at Chen Zhao worriedly. The two brothers seemed to have a way to control magical beasts. The magical beasts that Ramund Egler controlled could neutralize the enemy's small world and make the enemy's small world lose its effect. One had to admit that this ability was very effective against the top Shangqing experts. Of course, this ability could only be effective against those who had just entered Shangqing. For example, any one of the 8 referees could beat Ramund Egler up at any moment. Taste's ability was even more special. Chen Zhao could sense that the magical beast summoned by Tess Agel had created small worlds of various sizes according to their own strength. Apart from the original god-level magical beast, the other magical beast's small worlds weren't big. They were 12 meters, 20 meters, or even 30 meters. However, the small worlds of the magical beasts actually merged with each other. Then they spread out with the Dragonhawk as the center. Scram if you don't want to die, Tyler said arrogantly. I think I know why your father wants to get rid of you. What an annoying personality. Hearing Chen Zhao mention their father, Tyler Agler was even more furious. The Dragonhawk beside him felt its master's anger and also screeched at Chen Zhao. You won't blame me if I kill him, right? Chen Zhao asked, turning his head. Monica's expression was somewhat hesitant. She couldn't be completely sure, but she could vaguely feel that they were indeed her brothers. Mr. Chen, can you please have mercy? Fine. Chen Zhao nodded. What a joke. I need him. Shut up. Suddenly, Chen Zhao's voice boomed like thunder. The territory on the Dragonhawk disintegrated instantly. The magical beasts in the sky also fell like rain. The sky fell and the earth cracked. The brothers, Tyler Agler and Ramon Agler, were horrified by what they saw. The world really seemed to be collapsing. The two brothers sat on the ground. They seemed to have lost all strength and couldn't stand up. They couldn't even raise their arms. Terror. It was a terror that was imprinted in the depths of their souls. In an instant they felt absolute suppression. And a horrifying scene. It was a scene of doomsday. They didn't know if it was real or just an illusion. Even the territory collapsed. They didn't understand why it was like this at all. As for the dragonwing bird, it lay on the ground trembling. Standing beside Chen Zhao, Monica didn't understand what had happened. She only saw Chen Zhao roar. But other than that, she didn't feel anything else. What had happened? Okay, let's go, Chen Zhao said calmly. Monica looked at the two trembling brothers in front of her and nodded silently. Just as she was about to leave with Chen Zhao, Tyler suddenly shouted, "Wait!" Chen Zhao turned his head and looked at Tyler. "What? Do you really want me to kill you?" When Tyler looked at Chen Zhao, his eyes were filled with unconcealable fear. "Don't let Morris come into contact with Monica," Tyler Agler said. Perhaps it was best for Monica to stay by Chen Zhao's side. Of course, the main reason was that they couldn't do anything about it. "I'll only protect her during the competition," Chen Zhao said calmly. "Or give me a reason why your father wants to kill Monica." Chapter 31-28. Ramush Eigler and Tace Eigler shook their heads. "We don't know either. 25 years ago, he attacked us without any reason." Chen Zhao smiled and didn't continue asking. 25 years ago, they might not have known. But today, 25 years later, they must know. Otherwise, how would they know that Moraiser wanted to kill Monica? If Chen Zhao could think of this, the meticulous Monica could too. Chen Zhao and Monica left. The expressions of the two brothers were somewhat unsightly. "Taser, what do you think the old man is trying to do? In any case, they won't have any good intentions," Tess said with a cold expression. "We had better find suitable magical beasts as soon as possible to recover our strength. If before that..." Taser suddenly paused, as if he had realized something. "Go. Leave this place immediately." Taser's expression became anxious and terrified. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in front of him. Maurice Eigler, their father. Moraiser Eigel strolled over, and the surrounding plants automatically made way for him. Tace Agler and Ramush Agler's expressions changed. Fear, shock, and bewilderment. "Do you think the $200 million was well spent?" Mariah Egler smiled and looked at his two sons. "Did you release the news? Did you purposely leak the news that we're going to kill Monica?" Tace Agler's eyes were filled with fear and resentment. "Not only that, but the $200 million also helped me solve a lot of problems." Maurice Eigel's plan was to deliberately spread the news and attract his two sons. What he didn't expect was that Chen Zhao would also help him destroy the abilities of his two sons. Otherwise, even he would have to put in a lot of effort. After all, both of his sons' abilities were extremely difficult to deal with. But now, Chen Zhao had helped him solve most of his problems. Chen Zhao's best guess was that both his sons and Chen Zhao would be heavily injured. Or, Chen Zhao would die in the hands of his two sons. And then Chen Zhao would be like a mantis stalking a cicada. Tess Agler suddenly laughed. "Old man, you haven't won yet. Do you think you're very smart?" Morizer Agler looked at his second son disapprovingly. "Isn't the current situation enough to explain the problem? Or do you still have the strength to fight back? We can't beat you. But as long as Monica is under the protection of that referee, you won't be able to succeed. Haha. As long as I get what I want from you, I won't fear anyone. The Agel family will rise again in my hands. You want the power of Amantha? Come and get it yourself." The two brothers were obviously prepared to resist stubbornly, even if they knew it was futile. But as long as he could make his father suffer, even if it was just to buy time, it would be fine. How stubborn. Morizer Agler looked at his two sons unhappily. The next moment, green liquid began to drip from Meritor Agler's palms. When the green liquid touched the plants on the ground, they began to grow crazily. After the plants grew to a certain extent, they began to interweave with each other, forming human shapes. The humanoid figures of these plants all had their own domains. It was completely different from Taylor and Ramush's power. Morizer Egler's power was in the domain of plants. It looked similar to the domain that Taser had bestowed upon the magical beasts. In fact, it was completely different. Morizer Egler's domain should be called the anti-domain. It was the nemesis of all domains, and it was even more effective against Taser and Ramush. The so-called anti-domain meant that when it came into contact with a regular domain, both would be annihilated at the same time. The power of annihilation was very terrifying, especially for the one with the domain. It would be annihilated directly from the body. Of course, Morizer Egler would be affected too, but he happened to have a way to resist annihilation. So once the positive and negative domains were annihilated, the one who died was usually the other party. But Morizer Egler's power was not perfect yet. Only after combining the power of Taser and Ramush could his power truly reach a perfect state. A humanoid made of plants raised its hand, and branches shot towards Taser and Ramush. The dragon hawk beside Taser flapped its wings, creating a whirlwind. The branches could not get close, but the other plant humanoids also shot their branches at the dragon hawk. In the blink of an eye, the dragon hawk was tightly bound. The dragon hawk struggled a few times as a token gesture, but it soon calmed down. Not long after, the dragon hawk lost control of itself. It then became Morizer Egler's puppet. The dragon hawk's domain merged with the humanoid plant's anti-domain. An even more terrifying power was brewing on the dragon hawk. The domain around the dragon hawk became colorful, but the air was distorted. Taser and Ramush quickly retreated. What a wonderful power! Even though it's an incomplete fusion, it's still such a wonderful scene. I really can't imagine how powerful I'll be after I perfectly fuse all of your powers. After being controlled, the dragon hawk suddenly opened its mouth and shot out a ball of energy. This ball of energy contained the power of annihilation. Go away! Ramush pushed Taser away and placed his palms in front of him. When the annihilation energy flew in front of him, Ramush also released his power at the same time. His power was to neutralize the domain, but he could only use his own power to weaken the annihilation energy a little. The next moment, his palms were crushed and evaporated by the annihilation energy. Fortunately, Morizer Egler did not intend to completely destroy Ramush and Taser. Otherwise, this attack would have directly evaporated them. Taser, take my things away! Ramush knelt on the ground in pain. His arms had been completely annihilated. Taser's expression was unsettled. He looked at his father with eyes full of hatred. Hurry! You only have a chance if you obtain my power. Ramush knew that he no longer had a chance. But his hatred for his father was greater than anything else. Even if he died, even if he lost everything, he would not hesitate. Taser suddenly pierced through Ramush's chest. Ramush's face twitched. He looked down at Taser's arm and laughed bitterly. Kill him, or destroy that thing. Taser pulled out his bloody arm. In his palm was a black metal heart. The black metal heart dissolved in Taser's palm and turned into black liquid that seeped under Taser's skin. Ramush smiled. How wonderful! However, his smile froze and he fell to the ground. Taser looked at his father with tears in his eyes. I want you to die. Hee hee. Morizer Egler smiled. You know, I could have directly taken your power, but I didn't. Do you know why? Chapter 3129. Is this real? Monica stared at Tess Agler in disbelief. Chen Zhao also looked at Tess Agler. Do you have anything to explain? Tess Agler shook his head. No. Chen Zhao nodded and turned to Morizer. I'm going to take him back for interrogation. Mr. Morizer, you don't have any objections, right? He's from the Agel family and my son, Morizer said firmly. This is the Agel family's territory. I have the right and reason to punish him. Chen Zhao chuckled. Mr. Morizer, maybe my tone made you misunderstand. I'm not discussing with you. Are you going to interfere with the Agel family's business? This is the competition venue. As the referee, I have the right to punish and rule anyone here. Mr. Chen, don't you understand? This is my territory. I don't mind changing the leader of the Agel family. Chen Zhao's eyes glinted fiercely. Mr. Chen, I respect you, but that doesn't mean I'm afraid of you. I hope you understand this. Yes, I definitely understand. Chen Zhao nodded. But you should be afraid. I've never been a talkative person. I don't like to waste time with people either. I prefer to fight. Morizer Agel's palm started to gather the anti-domain. The anti-domain sphere flashed with black light and emitted a terrifying aura. Taser Egler had to die. Maurice Eigel did not intend to be secretive and put on an act anymore. He had to make a choice in a more forceful manner. As long as he obtained Taser's power and Monica's power, he wouldn't be afraid of anyone. He would no longer be afraid of anyone. Even if he were to face the Big Six, he would have the right to speak. Chen Zhao felt that Morizer Agel's power was somewhat familiar. It was the power of his inner world. But it wasn't complete. Chen Zhao could also release his inner world. He could restore the environment of his inner world. But Morizer Agel only released a portion of his inner world's power. Mr. Chen, one last question. Are you really prepared to be my enemy? Chen Zhao laughed mockingly. Are you sure you have the strength to ask me this question? Morris snorted and pushed his palm at Chen Zhao. The anti-domain energy ball shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out to take it. Tess Eagle's expression changed drastically, and he shouted, "Don't touch." But it was too late. Chen Zhao's palm had already reached the anti-domain energy ball. But the next moment, both Tess and Morris stared at Chen Zhao dumbfounded. Chen Zhao used his body to grab the anti-territory energy ball, but he wasn't hurt at all. The anti-domain energy ball was also balanced in Chen Zhao's palm. He didn't hurt Chen Zhao, nor did he lose control. Neither of them knew that the reverse domain they were talking about was actually their inner world. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't know that they called this the reverse domain. How is that possible? Meriwether stared at Chen Zhao in disbelief. This was too illogical. No one, no matter, could remove the counter domain. But why was he able to use his flesh and blood to dispel the counter domain and remain unharmed? How did you do it? How? Chen Zhao thought for a second. I didn't do anything. What do you think I should do? What can this thing do? Hurt me? Or kill me? Meriwether Eagle couldn't accept this. He put his palms together, and more anti-domain energy balls appeared around him. Is that all you can do? Chen Zhao tilted his head and looked at Meriwether Eagle. Although Meriwether Eagle had materialized his inner world, it didn't have any attributes. He could only materialize it with this kind of energy. It was also very unstable and could collapse at any time. Let me teach you how to use this power. Suddenly, Meriwether Eagle felt the anti-domain energy ball collapse. At the same time, a wave of heat rushed toward him. Everything around him turned into a molten hell. The temperature almost melted everything. Even Meriwether Eagle couldn't bear it. He could only cover his entire body with the power of his counter-domain. But even so, he could still feel his skin burning. Monica and Taser Agler were both under Chen Zhao's protection. Meriwether Eagle wanted to take out Chen Zhao's inner world and materialize it. But he realized that he'd lost control of his body. You're so weak. Why do you think you have the right to decide? Meriwether Eagle's face paled. He could vaguely feel it. The surroundings were filled with counter-domains. They were larger, more stable, and more perfect than his counter-domains. In fact, the inner world needed to maintain a balance with the outer world. But Meriwether Eagle's inner world didn't belong to him at all. He was only borrowing this power. He didn't really have it. There was no outer world either. Even if he borrowed it, the amount of power he could borrow was very limited. How is it possible? Why? Why do you have Sacred Michael's power too? Why do you have the complete Sacred Michael's power? And it's complete too? Sacred Michael's power? Chen Zhao looked at Meriwether Eagle. You said this is Sacred Michael's power? I've never heard of the power of Sacred Michael. This is Sacred Michael's power. You can't lie to me. Foolish mortals, Monica suddenly said. But her tone seemed to have turned into someone else's. You don't understand at all, Monica said. You're facing a real god. Frowning, Chen Zhao looked at Monica. Who are you? Chen Zhao was very sure that it wasn't Monica who was speaking. You can call me Pioneer or Sacred Michael, Monica said calmly. Monica said calmly. I really can't believe that my theory has been perfectly verified by you. Your theory? Yes. The heart domain, the heaven domain, and the stairs are combined to reach a whole new level, a power that surpasses God's. I failed, but I'm very happy to see someone succeed. I think you're wrong. I've never heard of your method, but I can roughly understand what you're saying. Maybe the details are different, but our paths are similar. How did you solve the problem of bearing? I failed at this stage. In the end, my body collapsed under the dual pressure of the heart domain and the heaven domain. Chen Zhao shrugged. I'm an enhancer. No, that's not right. I've calculated. Even enhancers can't bear the pressure of this power. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.